The night was quiet in the old junkyard. Rows of broken machines and forgotten space parts lay under the pale glow of the moon. A lonely man named Daniel walked slowly between the piles, his shoes crunching against rust and dust. Daniel was poor, his pockets almost empty. Life had not been kind to him. He had once dreamed of traveling among the stars, but now he barely had enough money for food. Yet he still wandered here, searching the junkyard like a curious child, hoping for something, anything, that could give his life meaning. He stopped when he saw it. A huge metal container stood in the corner. Covered in rust and scratches, its surface was dented, its lock almost broken. A small sign hung on it. 2 credits, Daniel blinked in surprise. 2 credits was nothing, less than the price of bread. Why was such a large container sold so cheap? He looked around. No one cared about it, the junkyard was nearly empty. The owner sat far away, half asleep. Daniel felt his heart race. Something about the container pulled him closer. His fingers touched the cold surface, and he swore he felt a faint vibration, as if something inside was alive. 2 credits, Daniel whispered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the last coins he had. He gave them to the sleepy owner, who shrugged and waved his hand. Take it. It's yours. Daniel dragged the container back to his small shed. It was heavy, heavier than it looked. His muscles burned, sweat rolled down his forehead. Finally, he pushed it inside and shut the door. Silence filled the room. The container stood in the center. Tall and dark, Daniel stared at it, his chest rising and falling fast. He laughed nervously. What am I doing? He muttered. He was broke, tired. And now he had spent his last money on this giant piece of junk. But then it happened. A soft sound echoed from inside the container. A slow, rhythmic thumping. Like a heartbeat, Daniel froze. His skin crawled. He pressed his ear to the metal, and his eyes widened. The sound was real. Something was inside. His hands trembled as he stepped back. No, this can't be, he whispered. Maybe it was a broken machine. Maybe some animal trapped inside. But no, the sound was too steady, too alive. The night grew colder. Wind whistled through the cracks of his shed. Daniel sat on a chair, staring at the container. He wanted to open it, but fear held him still. He kept hearing the faint thumps, sometimes followed by soft clicks, like whispers in a language he did not understand. Hours passed. Daniel could not sleep. His mind burned with questions. What if it was dangerous? What if the container had been thrown away for a reason? He thought about the owner, how easily he had given it away, almost as if he wanted to be rid of it. Daniel grabbed a flashlight and shone it on the lock. It was old, rusted, but still holding. He touched it, then quickly pulled his hand away as the metal vibrated again. The sound was louder this time, more urgent. He took a deep breath. All right, he whispered to himself. I bought it. It's mine. I need to know. He ran his hand through his messy hair, his heart pounding harder than ever. He picked up a crowbar from the corner. The metal felt heavy in his hands. He approached the container slowly. His shadow stretched across the floor. The heartbeat sound grew faster, matching his own pulse. Daniel swallowed, his throat dry. If I die, he muttered, at least I'll die knowing. With a loud crack, he jammed the crowbar into the lock. Rust and dust flew into the air. The container shook. Daniel pulled harder. The lock groaned. A sharp hiss escaped from the edges, steam or air leaking out. His eyes watered from the strange smell. Finally, the lock snapped open. The container door creaked slowly. Groaning like a beast waking from sleep, Daniel held his breath. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness inside. At first he saw nothing, just shadows and metal. But then his eyes adjusted. His jaw dropped. Inside were 8 tall glass pods lined neatly in 2 rows. Each pod glowed faintly with blue light, and inside each pod a figure lay motionless. Daniel's flashlight shook in his hands. His knees felt weak. He could not believe what he saw. The figures were not human. Their faces were delicate, their skin glowing faintly, their hair floating softly inside the liquid. Even in their stillness, they looked beautiful, almost unreal. Daniel stumbled backward, his breath caught in his throat. 8 pairs of closed eyes slept behind the glass. 8 strange yet breathtaking beings. He wanted to run, but he could not move. His body froze between terror and awe. 1 pod flickered. A soft hum filled the room. Daniel gasped. A pair of glowing eyes slowly opened, staring directly at him, and then the pod door began to open. Daniel's breath caught as the pod hissed open. Cold vapor spilled out and touched the floor like a ghostly mist. He stumbled back, his flashlight trembling in his grip. The figure inside the pod moved slowly, weakly. Like someone waking from a very long sleep, it was a girl, but not human. Her skin shimmered faintly under the blue light, almost like glass touched by moonlight. Her long hair floated around her shoulders, strands glowing softly like threads of silver fire. Her eyes opened wide, glowing a deep violet that pierced through the darkness of the shed. Daniel froze. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might break his ribs. He wanted to run, but his feet stayed nailed to the ground. The alien girl looked at him, her lips trembling as she whispered in a language he could not understand. The words were soft, musical, and haunting. I don't know what you're saying, Daniel stammered. His voice cracked with fear. He lowered the flashlight, raising his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. The girl blinked at him, her violet eyes narrowing in confusion. She swayed, weak, almost falling without thinking. Daniel rushed forward and caught her. Her body was cold, lighter than he expected, like holding smoke and water shaped into form. She looked up at him with wide eyes, her lips moved again. But this time the word was clear. Water. Daniel blinked. He rushed to a shelf and grabbed a bottle. Twisting it open with shaking hands, he handed it to her. She sniffed it cautiously, then sipped. Her throat moved as she swallowed, and a quiet sigh left her lips. The other pods began to hum. Daniel spun around in terror one by one. Soft lights blinked inside the remaining 7 pods. His flashlight shook as he pointed it at them. Each figure inside began to stir, their eyes opening, each pair glowing with a different strange color. Blue, green, gold, silver, even crimson. Daniel's stomach twisted. 8 of them. All alive. All looking at him, he stepped back. His breath shallow. His mind screamed at him to escape, but his heart refused. Something about their eyes was not threatening. It was desperate, tired, even frightened. The second pod hissed open, a taller figure stepped out. Her hair shimmered like flowing sapphire. Her gaze sharp, protective. She immediately moved to the first girl's side. Speaking in the same alien tongue, the two clung to each other. Whispering softly, Daniel watched them. Confused, his mind racing, he tried to speak. "Who are you?" His voice was low. Trembling, the taller one turned her head, her glowing blue eyes fixed on him. She stepped closer, her face unreadable. Daniel lifted his hands again. "I'm not your enemy." Suddenly, she raised her hand. A faint spark glowed between her fingers. The crowbar lying on the floor floated into the air. Daniel's mouth dropped open. The metal tool hung in the air like it was caught by invisible strings. Then it gently clattered back down. She was showing him a warning. Daniel swallowed hard, his knees weak. "All right," he whispered, "you're strong." "I get it." He backed away slowly. The taller alien nodded slightly. Her body relaxed, she pointed to the others, still trapped inside their pods, and then at him. Her meaning was clear. Help them. Daniel hesitated. His hand shook as he reached for the controls of the third pod. He pressed a button and steam hissed out as the glass door opened. Another girl stepped out, this one smaller, with green markings glowing faintly across her cheeks. She clutched his arm as soon as she stood. Her eyes filled with fear and need. Daniel's chest tightened. He had never felt so overwhelmed. 8 alien girls, each stranger and more beautiful than anything he had ever imagined, and they were here in his shed. He whispered to himself, "What have I done?" The 4th pod opened, then the 5th. Each time Daniel found himself holding his breath. Each alien was unique, their features delicate but unearthly, their colors and shapes unlike humans yet strangely familiar. Some looked at him with gratitude, some with suspicion, but none attacked. By the time the 8th pod opened, Daniel was drenched in sweat. His heart refused to slow down. They now stood together, a group of strange and breathtaking beings, their eyes glowing in the dim light of the shed, their whispers mixing into a chorus of alien tones. The first girl, the one with violet eyes, stepped forward again. She placed her cold hand gently against his chest. She looked up at him with desperate eyes and whispered, "Safe." Daniel blinked, his throat tightened. The word was broken, but it was enough. She was asking him for safety, for protection. Daniel sat down heavily on the chair, his mind spinning. He was poor, jobless, and almost homeless. He had nothing, and yet here he was, surrounded by 8 alien girls who had chosen to look at him as their only hope. The shed felt smaller, the air heavy with silence. Daniel rubbed his face and muttered, "This is crazy. This is impossible." But when he looked up, Their eyes were still on him, waiting, hoping. And then outside, the sound of engines rumbled in the distance. Heavy, slow, and menacing, Daniel froze. The aliens looked at the door with fear in their glowing eyes. The violet-eyed girl grabbed his arm tightly, whispering again, "Danger." Daniel's heart skipped. The junkyard was no longer quiet. Something was coming, something that wanted them back. The engines outside grew louder. Daniel's heart pounded like a drum inside his chest. He looked at the 8 alien girls standing in his shed. Their glowing eyes flickered with fear. It was clear they knew the sound, they had heard it before. The violet-eyed girl pulled on his arm. Her grip was stronger now. Her voice shook. "Danger. They come?" Daniel swallowed hard. He glanced at the shed door, then at the girls. "Who's coming?" he whispered. But they could not answer in his language. Instead, their faces told the story. Whoever was outside was no friend. The tallest girl, with sapphire hair, stepped forward. She raised her glowing hand, and the crowbar lifted from the ground again. This time it spun in the air. Sharp and dangerous, her blue eyes blazed. Daniel realized she was ready to fight. Daniel's stomach twisted. He was no hero, no soldier. He was just a man who had spent 2 credits on a piece of junk. But now his shed was filled with strange and powerful beings, and something deadly was waiting outside. The engine stopped. Silence fell over the junkyard. Then heavy footsteps crunched the gravel. Daniel could hear voices, low and harsh, metallic. Whoever they were armed. His throat went dry. The smallest alien, the one with green markings on her cheeks, hid behind him, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to protect her. He wanted to protect all of them. Even though he barely understood what they were, suddenly a loud bang echoed. The shed door shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. A voice shouted from outside, harsh and commanding. Daniel could not understand the words, but the tone was clear. It was a demand. The sapphire-haired alien turned to him, her expression sharp. She pointed at the container and then at the door. She wanted him to hide it. Daniel hesitated, then nodded quickly. He and 2 of the girls pushed the empty pods back into the container, closing it halfway, but there was no time. Another bang rattled the door. Daniel whispered, "We can't stay here." He looked around desperately. The shed had a back window, small and cracked. He motioned to the girls, pointing at it. The violet-eyed one understood. She nodded and guided the others toward it. But before they could move, the shed door burst open. A group of armored figures stormed in. Their suits were black, their helmets glowing red. Weapons raised in their hands. Daniel froze, his blood ran cold. The leader stepped forward. His voice echoed through a strange machine translator. "Return the cargo." His eyes, hidden behind the red visor, fixed on Daniel. The man's breath caught. "They were here for the girls," the sapphire-haired alien growled. A spark of blue light flashed from her hand. The crowbar shot through the air and struck one soldier's helmet. Cracking the visor, the soldier fell back with a cry. The room erupted in chaos. The bounty hunters opened fire. Bright bolts of energy filled the air. Daniel dove behind a table. His heart thundered. He had no weapon. No plan, just fear. But then the awakening truly began. The other girls, still weak but now alert, lifted their hands. Each one revealed something strange. The smallest one raised her palm, and a green glow spread across the floor. Roots of light wrapping around a soldier's legs. Pinning him in place, another girl, her golden eyes blazing, opened her mouth and let out a sharp cry. The sound vibrated through the air, smashing the weapons of 2 hunters into pieces. Daniel's ears rang, but the soldiers dropped to their knees. Clutching their heads, the crimson-eyed alien stepped forward. Her body glowed with heat. Flames licked her skin but did not burn her. With a single wave of her hand, she sent a burst of fire across the shed, forcing the soldiers to retreat. Daniel stared, stunned. These were not helpless beings. They were survivors, warriors, each one with power beyond anything he had seen. The bounty hunters had expected weak prisoners, but they had awakened fighters. The leader shouted again, furious. "Contain them!" More soldiers rushed in. Daniel's mind screamed at him to run. But when he saw the green-marked girl still hiding behind him, clutching his arm, he clenched his fists. He could not leave them. He had to stand with them. He grabbed a broken metal pipe from the ground. His hands shook, but he raised it anyway. He shouted, "Stay away from them!" His voice cracked. But the soldiers turned toward him, confused by his defiance. The violet-eyed alien stepped beside him. Her hand touched his arm, her voice soft but clear. "Human. Brave." Her eyes glowed brighter, and Daniel felt something strange. A warmth spread through his chest, like her energy was flowing into him. His fear lessened. His grip tightened on the pipe. Together, human and alien stood against the attackers. Bolts of energy scorched the walls. Fire and light crackled through the air. Daniel swung the pipe with all his strength, knocking one soldier to the ground. The violet-eyed girl raised her glowing hands, creating a shield of violet energy that blocked incoming shots. Sparks rained down. The battle was chaos. Daniel's shed shook, tools and boards falling all around them. But step by step the hunters fell back, overwhelmed by the sudden storm of alien power and human will. Finally, the leader shouted an order, and the remaining soldiers retreated into the night. Their engines roared again as they fled. The shed was left smoking, broken, and filled with the heavy silence of survival. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping. His pipe clattered to the floor. He looked up at the girls, their glowing eyes staring back at him, each one breathing hard, their faces fierce but alive. The violet-eyed alien knelt beside him. Her cold hand rested on his shoulder. She whispered softly, "Safe." Now Daniel nodded weakly. His whole body ached, but in his heart he felt something strange. Something new. These girls were not just strangers. They were now part of his fate, and their awakening had only just begun. The shed was filled with smoke and silence. The bounty hunters were gone, but the damage was clear. Broken boards hung from the walls. Sparks fizzed from shattered tools, and Daniel's hands still trembled from holding the pipe. He dropped it to the ground and leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. The alien girls stood around him, their glowing eyes shifting from relief to worry. The violet-eyed one knelt beside him. Her cold hand on his shoulder, she whispered again, "Safe." Daniel nodded weakly, though his mind was anything but calm. He looked at them closely now for the first time. He wasn't only seeing fear or beauty, he was seeing their strength. Each one of them had shown something different in the battle. Strange powers beyond human understanding. The sapphire-haired girl stepped forward. She held the crowbar in the air without touching it, spinning it gracefully before letting it float down. Daniel stared in awe. "Telekinesis," he muttered. She tilted her head, not understanding his words. But her expression showed pride. The green-marked girl came next. She bent down, touching the cracked floor with her small hands. Instantly glowing roots spread out, fixing broken boards and wrapping around loose beams. The shed steadied. Daniel's mouth opened. "You can repair things," she only smiled faintly. Hiding shyly behind her long hair, another alien stepped forward. Her golden eyes shimmering, she whispered softly, and a faint hum spread through the air. Daniel felt it in his chest, a vibration like music. The broken glass on the floor trembled, rising up and falling into neat piles. Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "Sound," he whispered. "You control sound." The crimson-eyed alien raised her hand next. A small flame appeared above her palm, burning bright but not harming her skin. She closed her fist and the flame vanished. Daniel's heart skipped. "Fire." "You're walking fire." The others stepped forward too. One with silver eyes moved her hand and the shadows of the room twisted, bending unnaturally before snapping back. Another with icy blue markings exhaled softly, and a breath of frost spread across the ground, freezing a spilled puddle of water. The last one, with emerald eyes, touched Daniel's wrist, and he felt warmth spread through his veins. The pain in his arm from swinging the pipe faded. She could heal. Daniel sat there, overwhelmed. 8 of them, each unique, each powerful. His heart raced as he looked at them. They were not only alien beauties, they were weapons, survivors, and perhaps something even greater. The violet-eyed girl pulled his hand to her chest. She looked at him with a steady gaze. "Human, safe," she repeated, then touched her chest. Safe." Her words were broken, but her meaning was clear. They trusted him, at least for now. Daniel's chest tightened. He was poor, powerless, and had nothing to offer. And yet here they were, looking at him as their shield. He didn't know if he could protect them, but he couldn't turn away either. He stood slowly, brushing dust from his clothes. "All right," he said softly. "You're safe with me." The golden-eyed alien tilted her head, repeating his words in a whisper. "Safe. With you," her voice carried like music. Soft and echoing, the others murmured in agreement. Daniel felt the weight of their trust fall heavy on his shoulders. But outside the night was not quiet. In the distance, engines roared again. This time they did not come closer. They circled, waiting, watching. Daniel clenched his fists. The hunters had retreated. But they hadn't given up. They would be back, stronger. The sapphire-haired alien walked toward the window. Her eyes narrowed at the glowing red lights hovering in the sky. She looked back at Daniel, her lips firm. She pointed at him, then at herself, then at the others. The message was simple. They had to fight together, or none would survive. Daniel's mind spun. He had spent 2 credits on what he thought was junk. Now he was standing inside a storm of power. 8 alien girls with abilities that could change everything. And he, an ordinary man, was suddenly the center of it. The green-marked girl tugged on his sleeve. She pointed at her glowing chest, then at him. Then she touched the broken boards she had repaired. Daniel realized she was trying to say something. Her power worked better with him nearby. Maybe all their powers did. The violet-eyed alien placed her hand on his arm again. The same warmth flowed through him, not just healing but strength. His body felt lighter, stronger, his fear dulled. He looked at her, confused. "What are you doing to me?" She only smiled faintly. Share. Daniel's thoughts raced. They were connected somehow. His presence made their powers stronger. He didn't know why. But the truth was clear. He was not useless to them. He was part of their survival. The golden-eyed one began to hum, a soft tune that made the shed feel calmer, less broken. Daniel sat down again. Running his hand over his tired face, he whispered, "This is insane." The crimson-eyed girl crouched beside him, her flames flickering faintly. She tilted her head, her voice calm. "No insane. Family." Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at them one by one, 8 strange and powerful beings, none of them human, yet all of them now depending on him. He thought about his life before tonight, lonely, broke, and empty. Then he looked at them again, glowing like stars in the darkness of his shed. For the first time in years, he felt something new, purpose, but before he could speak, the sapphire-haired alien stiffened. Her eyes turned sharp. She pointed outside. The sky glowed brighter. Engines thundered. Shadows moved over the junkyard. Daniel's heart sank. The hunters had returned, and this time they were not alone. The night sky above the junkyard glowed with red lights. Shadows of ships moved across the clouds like dark predators. Daniel stood frozen at the window, his chest heavy. The aliens gathered close, their glowing eyes sharp with fear. They knew what was coming, and so did he. But before the hunters returned, Daniel needed answers. His voice was low, urgent. "What are they after? Why are they chasing you?" The violet-eyed alien looked at him sadly. She pressed her hand against her chest, then pointed at the container. Her voice cracked. "Prison." Daniel's blood ran cold. He stared at the container sitting in the middle of the shed. He had thought it was scrap, worth only 2 credits. But now he realized it had been a cage. He whispered, You were locked inside." The sapphire-haired alien stepped forward. Her expression fierce, she spoke in her own tongue, the words sharp like blades. The golden-eyed one translated a few broken words into English. Captured, hunted, sold. Daniel's stomach twisted. He understood enough. These girls had not just appeared here. They had been taken, trafficked, treated like objects. His hands shook with anger. He clenched his fists. "And I bought your prison." His voice was filled with guilt. The crimson-eyed alien shook her head firmly. She touched his arm, her voice steady. "No, not prison now. Freedom." Her flames flickered softly. Warm instead of dangerous, Daniel felt her meaning. His choice to open the container had saved them. The green-marked girl stepped closer. She pulled a small object from inside the container. It was a broken tablet glowing faintly. She pressed buttons until a hologram flickered to life. Daniel leaned in, his eyes widening. The image showed a star map. Dozens of systems marked with red, strange symbols glowed. The golden-eyed alien pointed at one of them, her voice trembling. "Home." Daniel realized the map showed where they had come from and where they had been taken. The container had not only carried them, it had carried their secret. The violet-eyed one's voice broke with emotion. "War." She pointed at the red symbols. Then at herself and the others. "Experiment." "Escape." Daniel's chest tightened. They were not just prisoners, they were survivors of some cruel plan. Someone had wanted to use them, twist them, maybe even sell them as weapons, but they had escaped, only to fall into the hands of bounty hunters. He sat down heavily on a broken crate, his thoughts spinning. "So that's it," he muttered. You're not just rare. You're dangerous to them. They want you back. Not because you're weak, but because you're powerful. The silver-eyed alien stepped out of the shadows, her voice calm. Yes. Then she pointed at him. You. Why help? Daniel's throat went dry. He didn't know how to answer. He looked at his hands, rough and scarred from years of meaningless work. Then he looked at them. 8 pairs of glowing eyes staring at him with hope. For the first time in years, someone needed him, he whispered. Because no one else will. The golden-eyed one smiled faintly, repeating softly, No one else will. Her voice carried through the shed like a song. The others nodded. Their bond with him was growing. Stronger than words, but the sound of engines outside grew louder. Ships circled the junkyard. Red lights sweeping across the ground. The sapphire-haired alien clenched her fists. Her voice sharp. Hunters! Daniel's pulse raced. He stood quickly. We can't stay here, they'll find us. He looked around. His shed was broken, barely holding together. It would not survive another attack. We need to run. The violet-eyed alien shook her head. No run. They follow. She pointed at him again, her eyes glowing brighter. With you. Fight. Daniel froze, his chest heavy. He had never fought for anyone in his life. He had barely fought for himself. And now 8 alien girls wanted him to stand with them against enemies far beyond his understanding. He almost laughed in disbelief, but their faces stopped him. They weren't asking, they were trusting. The green-marked girl showed him the hologram again. Her finger traced the map until it landed on a blinking blue star. She whispered, Safe place. Daniel leaned closer. A safe place, you know where to go. She nodded quickly. The problem was clear, they needed to reach that star, but first, they had to survive the night. Daniel stood taller. His voice firm, though his body trembled. All right, then we fight. But we fight smart. He looked around the shed. His eyes landed on scraps of metal, broken wires and old machines. Ideas formed in his head. He had worked with junk all his life. Now it might save them. He pointed to the golden-eyed one. You can shatter things with sound, right? She nodded. He pointed at the crimson-eyed girl. You can burn. You? He looked at the green-marked one. You can trap things with those roots. We'll use all of it. They watched him carefully, slowly understanding his plan. Daniel's heart pounded. He had no weapons, no armor, but maybe, just maybe, he had something better. Teamwork. The violet-eyed alien squeezed his hand. Her voice soft but steady. Together. Daniel nodded. Together. His eyes hardened as the engines roared closer. Let's show them what freedom looks like. Outside, the hunters gathered, their red lights cutting through the junkyard. Their leader raised his weapon, his voice cold through the translator. The cargo is ours. Inside the shed, Daniel and the 8 alien girls stood ready, united not by fate but by choice. The hidden truth had been revealed, and now it was time to fight for it. The junkyard shook as the hunters' ships landed. Engines roared like thunder, their red lights cutting through the night sky. Daniel stood in the broken shed, his heart pounding. 8 glowing eyes turned toward him, waiting for his next move. He had never been a leader, never even been brave. But tonight he had no choice. He looked at the girls, each one with strange power, each one trusting him. His voice came out rough but steady. Stay close, trust each other. We fight together. The sapphire-haired alien raised her hand, pulling a pile of scrap metal into the air with invisible force. The golden-eyed one hummed, testing her sound. Broken glass rattled on the floor. The crimson-eyed girl clenched her fists, tiny flames flickering around her knuckles. Daniel felt the air grow hot. The shed door burst open. A squad of armored hunters stormed in, their visors glowing red. Their weapons glimmered with deadly energy. The leader's voice boomed through his translator. Return the cargo, human. Step aside. Daniel gripped a metal pipe in his hands. His legs shook, but he forced himself to step forward. They're not cargo, he shouted. They're free. The hunters didn't hesitate. The first one raised his weapon and fired. A bolt of red light flew across the shed. The violet-eyed alien reacted instantly, throwing up her hands. A glowing violet shield shimmered into place. The bolt hit it and scattered like sparks against glass. The battle began. The green-marked girl slammed her palms onto the ground. Glowing roots burst from the floor, wrapping around 2 hunters and dragging them to their knees. They shouted angrily, their weapons falling from their hands. The crimson-eyed alien stepped forward, her body glowing brighter. She thrust her arms out, and a wave of fire roared across the room, forcing 3 hunters back. Their armor smoked as they scrambled to retreat. Daniel swung his pipe at the nearest soldier. The metal cracked against the hunter's helmet. Sparks flying. The soldier stumbled, Daniel's chest heaved. He couldn't believe he had struck one down. Fear burned in him, but so did adrenaline. The golden-eyed alien released a sharp cry. Her voice shook the air. Weapons shattered in Hunter's hands. The sound cracked walls and windows. The soldiers staggered, clutching their ears even through helmets. The silver-eyed one stepped forward. Her shadows twisted like living creatures, wrapping around another soldier, dragging him into darkness where he thrashed helplessly. The icy-marked girl followed, exhaling frost across the floor. Hunters slipped, their armor freezing in place. Daniel looked around. His shed had become a battlefield of light, fire, and power. These girls were fighting not as prisoners but as warriors, he shouted. Don't stop. Push them back. But more hunters poured through the door. This was no small raid, it was a full assault. Ships outside dropped reinforcements into the junkyard. Daniel's stomach dropped, they were outnumbered. The leader raised his weapon, firing straight at Daniel. The violet-eyed alien leapt in front of him. Her shield shimmered, cracking under the blast but holding. Daniel's breath caught. She had protected him without hesitation. He whispered, "Thank you." She looked at him, her eyes glowing fiercely. The hunters regrouped, forming a line. Their weapons aimed at the aliens. Daniel's mind raced. They couldn't fight forever, they needed an escape. He turned to the green-marked girl. The map. She quickly activated the hologram again. Showing the blinking blue star, Daniel pointed. "We need to get there, but first we need to survive this." The sapphire-haired alien raised her arms. Scrap metal from the junkyard flew in through the broken walls, forming a floating barrier. Bolts of energy struck it, sparks flying everywhere. The aliens fought back, their powers clashing against the hunters' weapons. Daniel's body shook with exhaustion. He wasn't like them. He had no strange gifts. His pipe felt heavier with each swing. Yet every time fear tried to pull him down, he looked at the emerald-eyed healer, who stood close by. Her hand brushed his shoulder, pouring warmth into him. His pain eased, his strength returned. He realized he wasn't useless, he was their anchor, their center. The battle stretched into the night, hunters falling back and returning. The junkyard became a storm of fire, ice, sound, and steel. Daniel's heart thundered as he fought beside them. He was no longer a man who had wasted his life. He was fighting for something greater than himself. Finally, the leader raised his hand, signaling retreat. His voice growled through the translator. "This isn't over, human, they belong to us, and we will return." The hunters pulled back toward their ships. Engines roared, red lights vanished into the clouds. Silence returned to the junkyard. Daniel collapsed onto the ground. Gasping, sweat dripped down his face, his pipe clattered beside him. He had never felt so tired or so alive. The aliens gathered around him, their glowing eyes filled with gratitude. The violet-eyed girl knelt, pressing her hand to his chest again. She whispered softly. "Safe," Daniel laughed weakly. "Safe. For now." He looked at the broken shed, the scorched junkyard, and the faint glow of the hologram map. His voice steadied. "We can't stay, we have to move. We need to reach your safe place." The golden-eyed one repeated his words softly. Like a song, "Safe place," the others nodded. Their trust was now unshakable. Daniel stood, his body aching but his spirit burning. He had bought a rusty container for 2 credits, but what he had opened was far more than metal. He had opened a fight for freedom, a bond stronger than fear. The hunters would return. He knew that, but now he wasn't alone. He had them, and together they were ready. The night was far from over. The journey had only just begun. The junkyard lay in ruins. Smoke curled into the night sky. Daniel stood among the wreckage, his chest heavy. Around him, the 8 alien girls gathered, their glowing eyes shining softly in the dark. They had survived the hunter's assault, but Daniel knew it was not the end. The violet-eyed girl pressed her hand to his shoulder, her voice trembling but clear. "Danger, not gone." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know, they'll come back. Stronger." His hands clenched, his heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. The hologram map flickered in the green-marked girl's hands. The blue star pulsed faintly, a promise of safety. Daniel stared at it, his voice low. "We need to reach this place. It's the only chance you have." The sapphire-haired alien pointed at the sky. Her expression sharp, she whispered a word in her own language. Daniel understood enough, she was warning him. The hunters had left, but their ships were still out there, waiting, circling like predators. Daniel looked around the shed. He saw broken machines, twisted scraps, shattered pods. In his mind an idea formed, his voice grew firmer. We can't run in fear, they'll track you anywhere. We have to make a choice, do we keep hiding or do we fight for freedom? The golden-eyed alien stepped closer. Her soft hum filled the air, her voice echoed gently. Fight, freedom. The others murmured in agreement. Their faces were tired but fierce. They were ready, Daniel's chest tightened. He had spent most of his life drifting, never choosing, never fighting for anything. But tonight was different. Tonight he had a choice and he would make it. He looked at them one by one. Then we fight, not just to survive, but to live free. The emerald-eyed healer placed her hand over his heart. Warmth spread through him. Her eyes glowed as she whispered, Together. The night grew colder. Engines rumbled again in the distance. This time heavier, larger, the hunters were returning. But not with a squad. They were bringing a fleet. Daniel swallowed hard, the odds were impossible. Yet when he looked at the aliens beside him, he felt something stronger than fear. Their trust, their bond, their unbroken spirit. For the first time in his life, Daniel did not feel small. He felt human, truly human. The hunters' ships descended. Red lights painted the junkyard. The leader's voice thundered through a loudspeaker. Humans, surrender the cargo and live, resist, and be destroyed. Daniel stepped forward. His voice carried through the broken night. They are not cargo. They are not yours, they are free, and if you want them, you'll have to go through me. The aliens moved beside him, their powers sparking, glowing, humming. Flames lit the crimson-eyed girl's hands. Frost curled from the icy-marked one's breath. Shadows twisted around the silver-eyed alien. The golden-eyed girl sang softly, her voice vibrating through the ground. The sapphire-haired alien raised metal from the junkyard into the air like shields and spears. The violet-eyed one stood at Daniel's side, her shield shimmering around them. The hunters attacked. The night exploded with fire and light. Energy bolts scorched the ground. Metal screamed as it bent and twisted in the air. Roots of glowing green erupted from the earth. Entangling soldiers, flames roared, ice cracked. Sound shattered weapons. Daniel swung his pipe again and again. His arms burned, but every time he faltered. The emerald-eyed healer touched him, keeping him strong. He fought not with power, but with will. His voice roared louder than the hunter's machines. You're not taking them. The battle stretched across the junkyard. Hunters fell, ships cracked. The aliens fought like a storm. Their strange powers combining in ways Daniel could not have imagined. Fire and frost met, creating steam that blinded enemies. Shadows and sound struck together, shattering armor. Metal shields rose and fell like waves, but the hunters were relentless. Their leader charged forward, towering over the rest. His weapon blazing with red fire, he struck at Daniel. The man barely raised his pipe in time. The blow knocked him to the ground. Pain shot through his body. The leader raised his weapon again before it struck. The violet-eyed alien leapt forward. Her shield shimmered, blocking the attack. The impact cracked the air. She fell to her knees, exhausted. Daniel's heart twisted. He pushed himself up. Standing between her and the hunter, his voice raw. If you want them, you'll have to kill me first, the leader sneered, raising his weapon high. But in that moment, all 8 aliens cried out. Their powers surged together. Fire, ice, sound, shadow, roots, metal, light, and energy fused into one massive wave. The ground shook, the sky lit up with color. The hunters were thrown back. Their ships blasted apart. Red lights vanished into the dark. Silence fell. Smoke drifted over the junkyard. The leader's ship exploded in the sky, raining sparks like falling stars. The aliens lowered their hands. Trembling but alive, Daniel dropped to his knees. Gasping, his chest ached, but his heart felt stronger than ever. The violet-eyed alien touched his face gently, her voice soft. Human, savior. Daniel laughed weakly, shaking his head. No, I'm just a man who spent 2 credits. He looked around at them. 8 pairs of glowing eyes filled with gratitude and trust. But I'd spend it again 1,000 times if it meant this. The golden-eyed one sang softly, the word echoing like a promise. Free, the others repeated it, their voices blending into the night. Daniel stood slowly, his body broken but his spirit unshaken. He looked at the glowing map, the blue star waiting in the distance. his voice steady. We're going there. Together, no more cages, no more running. From now on, we choose our own path. The aliens nodded, their faces bright with hope. For the first time, they were not prisoners, not experiments, not cargo. They were a family. Daniel looked up at the sky, the smoke fading to reveal a sea of stars. His voice quiet but firm. Humanity's choice is simple. We don't turn away, we protect, we fight, we stand together. And with that, the man who once had nothing, who once wandered a junkyard alone, began a journey across the stars with 8 alien sisters of fate. What had started with a rusty container for 2 credits had become the beginning of something far greater. The beginning of a legend.